Are you posting episodes of your podcast online every week, but still after months of posting, you're not seeing any growth in listeners or bringing any traction into your business? If this sounds familiar, then this is for you. Tracy Beavers, host of Create Online Business Success, joins me to share her expertise as a podcaster and as an online business coach. And in this episode, you'll discover what's one thing people miss when it comes to getting visibility online, the assumptions many podcasters are making that lead to stagnant growth, why all podcasters should have an email list and how to start one, how to speak to your audience in a way that makes them feel seen, when you should or shouldn't use paid advertising to promote your podcast, how to make sure your podcast cuts through the noise, why you should aim for clear over clever, and much more. So if you want to attract more attention to your podcast and start bringing more value to your audience, then keep listening. Tracy Beavers, thank you for joining me on Podcasting Amplified.
Thanks, Joe. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So you run the podcast Create Online Business Success, and I wanted to tap into your insights around that, gaining visibility. So whether anyone's listening who has an online business or if they're just trying to get visibility to their podcast, what's one thing that a lot of people miss when it comes to attracting attention online?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing that I see is people think they're visible when they're actually not. They'll post once a week on one platform and they'll wonder why they're not gaining traffic. In the online space, and you know this, Joe, it's very crowded. It's loud. And so if I am going to establish myself as a thought leader, as an expert in my category and zone of genius, then I have got to kind of overdo it, really. Now, I'm not saying post 7 days a week, but what I am saying is, however often you can post during the week, we have to stick with it week in and week out. So I see a lot of people getting really excited about social, posting a lot, and then they get tired and they quit. And then a month later, they come back and they're posting a lot and they're really excited, and then they get tired and they quit. And that's not doing them any favors. So people think they're visible when they're actually not. I think the biggest thing I see. Love
that. I love these conversations because they always make me think of questions that I just didn't have written down or anything. I want to ask, why do they think they're visible? Like, do you think they're sort of seeing metrics and think those kind of metrics are normal, or are they not even thinking about metrics and they're just presuming that they're getting attention?
Yeah, I don't even think they're looking at the metrics. I don't know a whole lot of people that really effectively track their social media metrics. It's kind of an afterthought. So what I mean is they think, okay, I'm going to post on social media, check that off for the week, I'm done. But they're not actively engaging. They're not putting enough content out there with consistency week in, week out, even when we don't feel like it, to get the favor of the algorithm, to break through the noise. And so they think, okay, I posted, that's done, move on. But they're not engaging on other people's posts, commenting, liking, hearting, having DM conversations. It's like they think that if they build it, people will find them. This is not true. We cannot create a podcast and then sit back and hope that people find it. We've got to go out there and make sure people know about it in as many ways as possible and connect with other people to be sure they know about it and have conversations about it. That's how the visibility starts to turn in your favor.
Yeah.
So it takes work. It takes intention.
Definitely. I've been talking a lot to clients about audience borrowing at the moment because a lot of my clients, they don't have existing audiences, or not huge ones anyway. So it's all about getting in front of other people's audiences. And that's what you're saying, basically, rather than just posting yourself. If you're commenting on other people's, then their audience is going to see it as well. And it's going to amplify that more than, exponentially.
Correct. That you are more likely to be seen when you are, and social media is called social media for a reason. The platform the platform rewards us, whatever platform you're on. My platform of choice is Facebook. It's where I've built my multi-six-figure business without paid ads, without creating a truckload of free lead magnets. And it's what I teach in my group coaching program is I have over 10 strategies to squeeze every last nook and cranny out of Facebook to get you visible, to get your list growing, to get your income coming in. And it's called, Facebook, we have to do what the platform wants in order to reap the rewards of what the platform can give us. And so Facebook, for example, wants you to be social. They don't want you to just throw up a post and then disappear. They want you engaging on other people's things, just like you're saying. That is more visibility for you when you comment on my stuff and when I comment on your stuff. And I know you love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the same way. So if somebody is on, now Instagram's not my jam, but I can talk about Facebook and LinkedIn. Now LinkedIn is the same way. Later today, when I go and post our photograph that I took, our screenshot of our interview and how excited I am to be on your show, and I tag you, I'm going to get visibility with your audience and you're going to get visibility with my audience. And that's beautiful. That's an amazing thing. And the algorithm loves that. They're like, oh, Tracy and Joe are connecting. This is amazing. Yeah. And they're going to reward us for that.
Yeah. I think the kind of overall lesson there is like not making presumptions and measuring as well, actually seeing, when you just post to your own audience and don't tag anyone, have a look at what you're actually getting in return. What are you being rewarded with? Because like you say, a lot of people aren't looking at the numbers at all, but they're still sort of doing the same thing every week regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And some people listening will have an online business, some won't. Some might be thinking of it, like they've started attracting, a few dozen or maybe a couple of hundred listeners every month. They're starting to think, right, maybe I could actually, start that coaching business I've been thinking of doing, or, start selling some merchandise. What would you want to have in place before you sort of start an online business? Let's say you've got a small audience already.
Yeah, definitely want to have an email list. The social media platforms, we don't own them. If that is the only way a business is connecting with their clients or prospects or listeners, they're making a big mistake. We've got to pull the listeners off on the online space and onto our email list. This was something that I presented on stage about last fall at a podcast conference here in Arkansas, was the importance of list growth, email list growth for all podcasters that are like me that have an online business component and are using the podcast as a top of funnel strategy to grow the business, and podcasters that don't maybe have a business yet, like you're mentioning, but maybe they do want to grow their listenership and they do give away fun merch and they want loyal listeners. An email list is a great way to achieve that. And then that way they're poised for income later on if they do decide they want to have an online course or an offer of some kind, or even when it comes to attracting sponsors for your show. If I'm being asked to sponsor a show, I'm not only looking at downloads, but I'm looking at followers, because we all know downloads are kind of wonky now. They're not super, what am I trying to say? They're not super accurate.
Yeah.
I'm looking at followers. I'm looking at the countries the show is in, obviously. But I'm also wanting to know, what kind of email list do you have, Joe? How many people can you reach in that email list? Because when you land in someone's inbox, I like to describe it as the visual of, I've just landed in your living room. Tracy Beavers has shown up in your living room and she's got something for you. And it can feel really special, especially for a podcast listener that loves the show and is a loyal listener and follower. It makes it easier for that person to share the show with their friends. It makes it easier to deepen that relationship with the host of the show, which is always fun. So I think what I would say is, regardless of whether or not someone is certain they want to grow an online business right now, I think a very important step is to have people get on your email list.
Yeah, I think some podcasters might think like, okay, well, I'll do that once I've got, 50 listeners or whatever. But to the listener, they're the only listener, really. Like,
Yes.
regardless of whether you've got 5 people or 50 or 500, wouldn't you want to be treating them in exactly the same way? So I'm presuming you're suggesting sort of starting early with this email list thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would start as immediately as possible. It's not something you can really put off. And, I have students and clients that'll say, well, Tracy, I only have 15 people on my email list. And what I like to do is reframe that into, okay, if you only have 15 people on your email list, I want you to picture those 15 people in your kitchen or in your bathroom with you. That suddenly feels like a whole lot of people. Right? And just like you're saying, those 15 people are so excited to connect with you. And they're more likely to refer your show or your products or whatever it is you're doing to their friends when you develop that relationship. So I think it's something people should start from the beginning.
Yeah. And I think if people have time anyway, if you've got 15 instead of 150, then, put in 10 times the effort on those 15 people.
Yeah.
Email them more regularly, or just put more effort into the emails that you send them, making sure that they're like really valuable and like you're messaging a friend or someone in your kitchen, like you say.
Absolutely.
And then how do you actually get people on the email list? Like, we've talked about this a little bit on episodes before, about offering lead magnets and things, but I think a lot of people still don't know what they can do to give any value, and where do we put that, and how do I get people to download it, and without feeling like I'm sort of baiting them into something, another email list. Where do you get started with that?
That's a great question. So so there's two different things I want to touch on. Podcasters that do not have an online business, I'll get to them here in just a second, because there are things they can do to grow their list. But then podcasters that are like me that have a business. So as I mentioned, my podcast is a top of funnel strategy, meaning people come in brand new to me, but I warm them up to who I am through my podcast show. And a very simple thing to do would be to look at the episode that you're recording. For me, I'll give you an example of, let's see, how to be visible and promote, how to be visible for list growth in Facebook groups that don't allow promotion of any kind. That's a very hot topic for a lot of people that follow me. So if I'm doing an episode on that, I could very easily create a checklist or a PDF that corresponds to that episode that allows the listener to take a little deeper dive into what I've just taught them and give them something they can actually download. And so a very simple thing to do would be to create the PDF. And then after the podcast episode is recorded, you want to give a URL that's really easy to remember. Most of mine are tracybeavers.com/ whatever the thing is. And then in the podcast episode, a very easy call to action is, hey, if you're loving this training and you want to dive deeper into this strategy, go to tracybeavers.com/groups and grab my free PDF, a checklist that's going to walk you through what we talked about today. And then when they get it, I give them the podcast episode and the PDF in the email after they've opted in. So it makes it a little bit more robust. Now, for me, my podcast episodes are actually me going live. I go live every Thursday at 11:30 in several destinations. Then we pull the audio and use it for the podcast episode. So what I love to do is, instead of maybe giving them the podcast episode with the PDF as their lead magnet, give them the video. Because video is super powerful because they can see me. They can see my face. And they can see that I talk with my hands. They can get a really good idea of who I am when I'm on video. So that's a really easy thing to do. Just create something that's free that corresponds to what you're already talking about, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Also, when it comes to free lead magnets, we want to have one that pertains to your paid offers. So like for me, I have my 8-week group coaching program called Business Visibility Made Easy. That's where I teach all of my organic list growth strategies. And so I have created a couple of free lead magnets that correspond to that offer. So I'm going to touch on them in the podcast episode. And then I'm going to share, hey, if you're loving this and you want to learn more, like learn how to maximize your Facebook personal profile for list growth, go to tracybeavers.com/personal and grab that. But that corresponds to my offer. So what we're doing is they're coming in top of funnel with the podcast, and then they're listening to my episode, learning more, and they're liking what they're hearing. And then they're like, ooh, I want to grab that free thing. So they go grab that. Well, that corresponds to my larger offer. So they're more likely to move through my funnel to then become a buyer. So for podcast hosts that do not have an online business yet, or maybe don't ever want to have an online business, they can do some fun things to grow their email list. A great one. So there were some gentlemen. So at the podcast conference that I was a speaker at last fall, they did an awards ceremony, and there were these two gentlemen who had a really fun show called Should Have Been a Podcast. And they won an award. They're amazing. They had these really cool T-shirts on with their podcast name and the abbreviation of it and the logo and all that jazz. Well, that's a really fun thing to give away to your listeners who love your show. And so all you'd have to do, you already got the merch. You could just say, hey, if you want to win one of our awesome T-shirts, then go and sign up for our newsletter. And we're not going to spam your inbox. We're going to send you behind the scenes stuff about the show. You're going to be the first to know when an episode drops. You're going to hear the backstory on our guest experts, things that we don't share on the show. And that's really cool because the listener's like, oh, I'm going to get the behind the scenes. I'm going to be the first to know, and I can enter to win a T-shirt or a cup or a sticker or a something. That will grow your email list. Yeah.
And I think if people are unsure of what that thing is they should make or offer, then it's probably a signal that you need to have more conversations with your listeners, or just sort of get a little bit more into their mindset to understand what they'd find valuable.
Yeah. And if they don't have to give away a sticker or a T-shirt or whatever, they could simply give away, like I mentioned, the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like it would be like you emailing your list and going, hey, I interviewed Tracy Beavers today. Would you like to know the backstory on how she ended up where she is now, and a couple of really strange fun facts about her that nobody's ever heard? And they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. And they'll go sign up for your newsletter in order to get that information that you're not sharing anywhere else. It really deepens that connection with the other person.
Awesome. What's your opinion on paid ads, like on social, pay-per-click, YouTube, for podcasters and online business owners?
Yeah. The most important thing to remember with paid ads is, it doesn't matter what kind of paid ad it is, whether it's a radio ad, TV ad, magazine, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google, whatever. A paid ad is going to amplify whatever you have currently going on. So it is really important to have proof of concept before you throw money at something. I see this a lot of times. People come to me and they go, I ran paid ads and it didn't work. And I'm like, well, what did you run the paid ad to? Well, they were running it to a free lead magnet that was not converting well in the first place. And they think that by throwing money at it, it's going to be the silver bullet fix to make it convert. That's not true. So you want to make sure that your free lead magnet is converting. You want to make sure people are loving your podcast, that you're ranking, that you've got consistent followers and downloads, that there's some proof of concept there. Then you can throw money at it. Because again, it's going to magnify whatever you've got. If what you've got's working, it's going to explode it. If what you've got is not working, it's not going to fix it. So that's the biggest mistake I see with paid ads. And for me, paid ads, because my audience is on the expensive side, so course creators, coaches, and service providers that assist them, that's an expensive audience in the online space. For me, paid ads were not, they just did not convert. But I have some clients who have a different audience that can get really great leads for not a lot of money. So I would want the audience to remember that if you're going to do a paid ad, make sure what you're going to put in that ad is already converting. And then also look at your audience. Does it make sense for you to spend the money depending on your audience? Because some of my clients, I have a couple of long arm quilters that have been with me for a while as one-to-one clients. They can get leads for 25 cents and they're good leads. And that's amazing. But, not everybody can do that. So you want to make sure that it is going to be a return on your investment and you're tracking who's coming in from the lead, I'm sorry, from the ad? And are they sticking around? Or are they just getting on your list and then they're unsubscribing and it's not turning into a conversion for you?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because it's similar to my opinion, really. Like, I have clients and we'll launch their podcast. It's like, right, we've launched it out there. Let's see what the response is. There's a couple of things we need to tweak in your audio and the way you're asking questions and things like that. And then we'll start trying to get it in front of people. But sometimes they'll just sort of go for it and throw some money into a random ad. And I'll have to say to them, and this is obviously something I need to caveat when we're actually launching the podcast, but I have to say, like, we're still working on the content at the moment. We're still getting the questions nailed. We're still, seeing what the response is to these different shorts. And so, yeah, before spending money on putting this in front of people, let's make sure it's bang on.
Right.
Yeah. I did the same thing for my business years ago, when I was just trying ads to get people to the website. But I met someone, marketing expert, and we talked about the buyer journey and, the experience and all this stuff. Like, she was basically like, stop spending money on ads. Let's get this right first.
Yep. That's good advice.
Yeah.
I like what you said, bang on. That's a great British phrase. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, it must be.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess
I'm going to use that
outside.
today in a sentence. Bang on.
Nice.
I like that.
So what about people who are like, no one wants to hear this stuff? They've started their podcast and they're kind of stuck in this mentality that the reason why they're not converting people to either listen to their podcast is because they think, there's too many business podcasts out there. There's too many podcasts about online business or about podcasting or whatever. What would you say to those people? Like, because I know you wouldn't tell them to just give up, but there must be some ideas you have around sort of cutting through the noise and differentiating yourself.
Absolutely. I think the biggest, the most important thing would be to listen to your audience, do your market research, because sometimes we end up thinking our episode or our online course or our ebook is going to be the next most popular thing, and we end up missing the mark because we haven't listened to our audience. What do they want? It's not what they need, it's what they want. You have to give people what they want, then you can give them what they need, right? And so it's really important to do that market research and really dial into what are they seeking? What are the emotions they're feeling? What is the transformation they want? What's the goal they have? And then coming from a place of confidence in your messaging, I think there's a business and sales coach on every corner of the internet, Joe. I really do. And so I could say the same thing about myself. Why would anybody listen to me? Well, I have a very different take on growing a business. I teach all organic strategies, and I'm not the list growth coach that's going to tell you to create yet another free lead magnet because you've already done that by the time you get to me. So I have a very different take on strategies to build a list and a business, but it's based on the research that I did with my audience. And so I think if they're aligned that way, they're going to be fine. But I do see people, and I don't know if you see this as well, they give up too soon. Because growing any business, whether it's a boutique brick and mortar or you buy a restaurant franchise, it's not a build it and they will come thing. We have to do the work. We have to put in the reps. We have to let people know we are there and stay consistent with it, because it can take an online business. It can take 18 to 24 months to start making money, to start gaining traction. And it's the same thing with a physical business. Franchises stand a little bit better chance than a mom and pop because they've got that brand behind them. If you're building a McDonald's franchise, that's, people know that's that sign. and they know what you offer. But if you're building a boutique, or let's say, one of my friends years ago was an attorney here in our city, and he said, even when you graduate law school, if you open up your own law office, it's going to take 3 to 5 years for you to really gain a following. And I just feel like people give up too soon, because one of the things that's really tough in the online space, and something I could get on a soapbox about, is the fact that there is a lot of messaging around how easy it is to build a business in the online space, or how easy it is to build a podcast. And it's not. It takes work. It takes time. It takes intention. It takes, not giving up. So I think people give up too soon.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's easy to start these days. Like, we've got the tools that anyone can just start a podcast in, an hour. And then, like you say, they'll give up after a few months because it's not worked. But it's like there's such a huge gap between just starting and actually sort of building something that people want. But yeah, it's like we say, like going back to that word presumptions or assumptions, it's best not to just presume that your content is right, that it's exactly what people want. You need to ask people.
Right.
And then just moving on a little bit to your podcast specifically, there were a few kind of nuances that I found interesting. But firstly, I know it took you a little while. You were thinking about sort of starting a podcast for a few years before getting into it. What held you back originally?
I'm sorry?
What held you back from starting?
Oh, what held me back? Yeah, it was the tech.
Okay.
Because tech is not my love language, not by a long shot. And the thought of so years ago when I started, what I was seeing was podcasters that had a studio or a really cool microphone, lighting, sometimes the foam stuff around them, or some of them were sitting in a closet surrounded by clothes so that it sounded good. And then the editing piece, oh God, don't get me started on that. That's tech. I don't want to do that. And so it just felt enormous. And so instead of choosing a podcast right away, I chose going live. So what I teach my clients and students is you need to have one regular piece of weekly content. And that means either a live, where you go live on social media, or a podcast or a blog. Now, preferably they choose a video or a podcast, because a blog is static words on a page and it doesn't convey your personality. It doesn't allow that deep connection of know, like, and trust immediately. It takes a lot longer. Plus, with SEO, you've got to be found. And so I thought, okay, I don't know what microphone to choose. I have no clue what editing software is or what it does or how to use it. This just feels enormous. And so I just said, okay, I can push a button and I can talk to people. So that's what I'm going to do. And it wasn't until about a year ago, and I feel so dumb admitting this, but it's the truth. It was one of those duh moments where you're like, why didn't I think of that? So about a year ago, one of my friends who teaches podcasting, she said, Tracy, you're using StreamYard to go live in your free Facebook group, on your YouTube channel, and on LinkedIn. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, pull the audio from StreamYard and use that for your podcast. And I was like, huh. I don't know why I didn't think of this myself. And then with tools like Descript, I took it at baby steps at a time. I bought my microphone. Turns out I didn't need fancy lighting. I'm good. And I paid a friend of mine to teach me how to use Descript. Of course, it took me probably 2 weeks, to figure it out because it's not my love language. Then I asked my son, who's a senior in college, he's 22. I'm like, can you be my podcast manager and stitch the intro and the outro and the episode together in Descript, get the final compilation, put it out on Buzzsprout, da-da-da-da. He goes, yeah. Joe, he learned Descript in about 15 minutes. I was so annoyed. I was like, this took me 2 weeks to learn. So anyway, to answer your question, it was just the tech. And the fact that I thought, okay, I would go live. And then I thought I would have to go then record the podcast as a static episode, by itself. And once I figured out I didn't have to do it that way, it was freeing. And then once I found the help, created a thumbnail, got Buzzsprout, figured that out. That wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be. But yeah, it was the tech.
Interesting. Yeah, because that's the one thing that was my kind of forte before I started, because I worked in recording studios, so it was always about the audio to begin with. And then it was more that I was learning the sort of marketing side of things when I started my business and that. But it doesn't help that there is a lot of conflicting information out there about the tech, and it's hard to know what to listen to.
It's that way with everything in the online space. There's an argument for everything.
Yeah, and it's hard to know.
And there's so...
Yeah, like who to listen to, because there's so many articles out there talking about podcast mics, but they're not written by people who know audio. They're written by maybe people who, are into marketing, or it's just a kind of general blog, and they've just pulled whatever's got a good review on Amazon and recommended it. But I mean, the Samsung Q2U that you're using is one that I recommend to people anyway, because
oh, good.
It doesn't matter where you're recording; it doesn't pick up too much of the echo and that, does it?
Yeah, no, it's been really good for me. I'm in my kitchen, standing at my kitchen counter, because this is where the lighting's good and it's got a decent background, and nobody else is here but me.
But it sounds, the podcast sounds well edited. It sounds
Thanks.
like you do. I mean, how scripted is it? Because it sounds sort of tight. It's not like you're sort of generally chatting around a topic. It sounds like there's a lot of thought into the solo episodes, especially.
Thank you so much for that. That makes me feel really good. So when I go live, my audience knows this. I have to have notes, because if I don't, my brain will shut off halfway through. I'll forget half the things I want to share with you, and I just am not going to take that chance. So my method every week is to literally write out I have an outline that I teach my students for when they want to go live, where you do the hook of here's what we're going to talk about today, introduction of me, which stays the same. So week in, week out, I could probably do it anytime in my sleep, because I've the meat of the training, what I want to teach people, and then the call to action. And that makes it a really easy framework for me. But I do write out the points I want to make, and the things that I don't want to forget. And so what I do is I get StreamYard going live in those 3 places. And then I literally tab over to a Google Doc that has my framework in it. So I've got the hook right there, my intro, and I can stay on point. I'm not squirreling off into some other topic that isn't relevant. And the same goes for my interviews. I ask my guest experts, I ask them to pick the topic, because especially we tell them the approximate air date. So in case they have a promotion going on, I want them to be able to steer the conversation in a way that's going to benefit them the most. And so I let them pick the topic. I ask them to say, hey, send me 3 or 4 questions that you want me to ask you. And then we kind of have a conversation. So it's conversational style, but it is it's tight is a good word for it. So I appreciate that. But yeah, that's my method, just to make it easy so I don't forget anything.
Yeah. It's interesting about letting the guest pick the topic. I mean, I know if I'm going to guest, if I want to guest on a podcast, then I will suggest a topic, just because it makes it easier for the host. But are there any times where they might suggest a topic and you feel like it's not what your ideal listener needs exactly? Or is it that once you've said yes to a guest, you know that they're going to be bringing the right kind of content?
Yeah, I vet people before they're on my show. I have people that will pitch me. I'm on Podmatch.
Yeah.
And people will pitch me all the time as a host. And they're clearly not listening to my show, because, I don't do a lot of product-based business. I don't help a lot of product-based businesses. I don't do a lot of talk about SaaS, software as a service. There was one guy that was so off the mark, and I was like, I was like, oh, bless your heart. You haven't listened to the show. You don't know my audience. And so that's a no for me. But when I do book someone in, a lot of what's happened for me is the more shows that I'm on, the more people ask to be on my show. And so if I've been on their show and we're doing a podcast swap, I already know them and I know their content and I know we share a similar audience. So it really hasn't been, I haven't had to email somebody back and say, hey, that topic's not a good fit. Sometimes what they do, which I like a lot, is they'll say, okay, Tracy, I'm on the fence about these two topics. Which one do you like the most? And then I'll pick, between the two they give me. But I really haven't had that problem, thank goodness, because I do know the people that are coming on the show pretty well by the time they're there.
Interesting. And just a couple more questions. There's one other thing I noticed, that you refer to your listener. I know this sounds a bit weird without me explaining it first, but you refer to your listener as the listener, singular. And I think that'd be quite unusual to some people, because they would say the listeners, or they just wouldn't even address the people listening. But you single that one listener out who's sitting there at home listening. Is that intentional?
Yeah.
Can you just explain that? Because I think it might be something that a lot of people won't have thought of before.
Well, and I'm impressed that you picked up on that. You've really done your homework. That's wonderful. It's no wonder your audience loves your show so much. I really try to speak to one person. And this was something I learned a long time ago. So the example I like to give is, if you opened up an email from me and it said, hey, Joe, how's your week been this week? Or it said, hey, everybody, hope you've all had a great week. Which one of those feels better to you?
Yeah.
It's the, hey, Joe, how are you?
With the hey, everybody, it feels like if I unsubscribed or stopped listening, you wouldn't miss me. But with the hey, Joe, it feels like more. Yeah.
We want to make it personal, because to that person, they are the only listener. They're invested in you as a host, and they don't care who else is listening. They're like, Tracy's my new best friend. She goes with me on when I go walk my dog. She's teaching me how to grow my email list and my business. And so it's so important to as much as you can, address that one person. So like in the cold open, most of the time you'll hear me say, hey, my friend, I'm so glad you're here. It's the same thing. Instead of saying, hey, everybody, I'm so glad you're listening today. You don't want to be in a crowded room with a whole bunch of other people. You want to be sitting having a coffee chat with your host,
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's a big reason why a lot, and I try not to shoehorn AI into every single conversation I have, but a lot of people are kind of using AI to supposedly as like someone, a friend, someone who's going to talk to them. And if you can be that podcast host who is that friend in your listener's ear, so they don't have to resort to making friends with a robot, then that's always a plus.
I think so.
And then just one last question.
Sure.
If there was something I know we've already talked about the tech, but if there was something else a year ago before you started, or a little over a year, that you wish you'd have known before you started podcasting, what would it have been?
That's a really good question. I really felt like I did my homework before I started it. I was fortunate enough to have a really good podcasting course that I bought that talked about how to name a podcast show for SEO and the tagline and all that stuff. I am learning, though, just this summer, because I am in another program for my podcast to make it better, the importance of paying attention to the SEO keywords in your episode titles and choosing clear over clever, which is something that that's been in marketing. That's marketing 101. We always want to be clear over clever, because if we're clever, they don't understand what we're talking about. Sometimes we miss the mark. And so I'm going to be actively going back to my old episodes and checking the names of those titles and seeing if they could be improved from an SEO standpoint. So I think that would be something that if someone's starting a podcast, I would love for them to be very aware of the importance of SEO when it comes to searching. You know, your audience is searching for a show. We want to put what you do in the title, and we want it to be very clear.
Yeah. And that's made me think, actually, another sort of nuance of your podcast is the name, which is definitely clear over clever. I mean, it's clever because you've picked it for that reason, to be clear, but it's very obvious what it's about: create online business success. Like you can't get any more clear than that, rather than something. I mean, some people might have called it or suggested you call it the Tracy Beavers show or something.
They actually did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually did, Joe. And I was like, And I thought about it for a minute because, well, how much fun is that to have a show named after you? That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, friends, no, I'm not Joe Rogan. I'm not, I'm not a big name. I'm not Oprah. I don't have a big name. I'm not famous. So I think if you are a person that has a large following, you can name the show after yourself, but you want a tagline in your podcast player that still talks about what the show's about. Otherwise, you're relying on people to search your name to find the show, which may work if you're super famous. But for me, I'm not that famous. I'm not that big a deal.
Yeah. And these days, even a lot of the celebrities who do have very big followings, they're not all just using their name. I think even they're having to kind of think of something a little bit more, something that stands out and, fits what the topic actually is, rather than just relying on their name, because otherwise it would just look the same as the other sort of talk show host that started a podcast last week. Cool. Okay. Well, that's loads of really useful information for people. So thank you, Tracy. For anyone who wants to take a listen to Create Online Business Success, you can find it on all your favorite podcast platforms. And yeah, if you do run it or want to start an online business, then obviously that's going to be especially useful because they're nice, short and sharp episodes as well. So it's very easy to get started.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Is there anywhere else you'd like to send people?
Sure. If they are on Facebook, I have a free Facebook group that has about 4,000 online entrepreneurs in it. It is a wonderful community of support. You're encouraged to promote your show, promote your offers. And it sounds like it would be a spam fest, but it's not. And then you're also encouraged to ask for help, to ask for feedback, to network with other people in the group, to maybe find some potential collaborations and more podcast interviews. And so the group is called Be a Confident Entrepreneur. That's the short name. The full name is Be a Confident Entrepreneur, Get Visible, Grow Your Email List and Your Income. And just come join us, answer the membership entry questions, tell me that you were listening to Joe's podcast, and that's how we connected. And I will send you a welcome DM and we can get to know each other. And if there's anything I can do to help you grow your show and your business, I'll be happy to do it.
Cool. I'll have to take a look at that myself. I'll get the link in the show notes. I think 4,000 sounds like a nice size as well. It's not like 50,000 where no one knows and there's loads of spam, like you say, but it's not so so small that you're not going to get much activity. So that's a good one to have a look at.
Thanks.
Well, thanks again, Tracy, and I'll catch up with you again. Thanks for listening to Podcasting Amplified. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review on your favourite podcast platform. We'll be back next time with another conversation offering more insights to take your podcast to the next level and help you to achieve success. Happy podcasting.